Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are doing another video talking about an older archetype that definitely needs support to be able to compete in the modern metagame as we know it, and we'll talk about what exactly it's looking for. So today we're looking at Crusadia specifically. This is a deck that's actually pretty good as a really solid base, but definitely needs a little oomph to be able to compete in the metagame. Now, a format or two ago when we still had DPE and stuff running around and Verte Anaconda, this deck actually was pretty good at facilitating that stuff just because it spams link monsters. You'd be able to take advantage of Hulk, Verte, and Dagda with great success. But since that format, the deck doesn't really have a true direction it wants to go in. There's a couple different ways you can try to make it go in, but it never seems to be better than a fringe rogue deck at best. So I'd love to see a little bit of support here. We also, just to make note of, we got a crawler card in Power of the Elements, so it is entirely possible that Konami says, hey, you know what, let's go around the World Legacy archetypes again and give them each one nice little card. The crawler card is awesome for crawlers. I just want to see that extended to the other World Legacy strategies. So I think it's worth talking about Crusadia here. So yeah, we're going to start by going through the cards Crusadia already has access to, and then we'll get to the portion where I'm talking about what the deck's missing and what I'd like to fill in those missing places. So starting off here with what the deck already has access to, we might as well go from the main deck into the extra, and then we'll talk about spells and traps. Crusadia monsters, they all have the same extension effect where they can just summon themselves to a zone a link monster points to, yours or your opponent's that can't come up, and then they have bonus effects. We'll talk about these, in my opinion, in order of best to least. Draco is the best one. It targets a Crusadia when it's summoned to a zone a link monster points to and adds it back from grave. Really, really good +1 card. Arborea, she's kind of like Balinx in grave, but also is a tuner, so that can absolutely come up down the line. Reclusia is another piece here. I like this one. I think this one's not appreciated enough, but I think it potentially could be depending on support we get. But yeah, when it's summoned, it can target a Crusadia card you control and one card your opponent controls, destroy them both. But with stuff like Arborea, you can protect your card while popping theirs, which is really nice. Magius gives whatever Crusadian link monster he targets double damage if it battles a monster, and then Leonis gives a Crusadian link piercing, so by far the worst one. It's not that close. Alright, then we get to the links. Magius is insane. If any card is summoned under him, he can search any Crusadia from deck to hand. That's a really, really solid. Getting you access to whichever Crusadia you didn't open, that is the best. Which is really, really good. And also, all the Crusadia link monsters, aside from, I think, Avermax and maybe Spatha, gain the attack of the monsters they point to, but the monster they point to cannot attack. So they get really big, which is kind of nice to make them harder to deal with, but yeah, just worth mentioning. Regulex is the next one, and this one is a very, very important one to note. Kind of like how I had a little extra sorrow behind my voice when I talked about Reclusia. I think Reclusia is the most neglected main deck monster in this archetype, and I think Regulex is the most neglected extra deck monster in this archetype, because when any monster is summoned to a zone he points to, he searches a Crusadia spell or trap. Now, unfortunately, up to this point, the Crusadia spells or trap the pool for them is just mediocre at best. They're okay. We'll talk about those when we get there, but you'll see there, and I think he could be made use of way, way better if they got the right support. Next up is Spatha. This card was better in dragon-based decks, moving stuff like Guard Dragon, Elpie, and Pisty to open up zones so you can do crazy Guard Dragon plays. But since then, hasn't really come up too much. Echomax, really, really good card, honestly. He gets huge because he points down twice, so he can get gigantic. He also has an ability to quick effect tribute any Crusadia or Legacy monster he points to just negate any face-up card on the field. That's really, really good. That is a very safe blanket negate that can save you from board breaker cards potentially, as well as, just engine cards, whatever it is. Really, really good interruption there. And then we get to Avermax. Technically, this card has Crusadia in the name, so that could come up depending on support, but he's mostly just a big Chungus with good protection, and he punishes your opponent if he's removed from the field, so that's kind of why you play him. No other reason other than that, but, we'll take it nonetheless. He's still a solid card at the end of the day. Then we get to the spells. Power is essentially like Eagle Booster. Targets a Crusadia. It's unaffected by your opponent's card effects this turn. Pretty good at protecting like Magius when your opponent tries to hand trap it. And then Revival pretty much supports OTKs. It's fine, but I really don't want to play this brick in my deck, to be honest, unless I'm playing like a hard-going second variant, which I won't be, but some people do, and that's fine, but I just don't think that's the best way to play the deck. Then for the traps, Vanguard's okay. It can tribute a Crusadia or World Legacy to summon a Crusadia or World Legacy straight from the deck. That's like being able to summon Reclusia straight from the deck, then pop a card. So it can kind of be an interruption, but it's not the best way to do it, to be honest. So it's like meh. And then we have Crawler. Crawler does come up. A lot of variants of this deck will play one of this because you search this off of Regulix, you set this, and then you make Equimax, and then when you activate Crawler, it summons itself as a monster under Equimax, and then searches you a World Legacy card from deck to hand, and then because it has Crusadia in the name, it can be tributed off of Equimax for a negate. So you'd have a follow-up plus a negate there. It's fine, but it's not like so great that like, oh man, this is so good, you gotta play it kind of situation. I just think it's meh. It's okay. Which brings us to like what we're lacking. And I think one of the biggest things we're lacking in this deck is like a superior extender. It feels like all the cards in the deck are like decent extenders, but like they don't have a superior extender. I'd love to see this deck get its own emergency teleport. Now what I mean by that is it needs to have Crusadia in the name so that it can be searched off of Regulix. You know, I already mentioned it before. Regulix doesn't have many great targets. I would say Crusadia Crawler's an okay target. I would say Power's an okay target. But outside of that, there's really nothing great. If this deck got an extender like this, it would be absolutely crazy for the deck. For a couple reasons. First and foremost, well, let's just say, okay, first off as well, this says like level 3 or lower psychic. Let's just assume this is just a quick play spell that says special summon one Crusadia monster straight from your deck. There you go. And, you know, it could be a hard once per turn. Doesn't have to be, but if it is, I wouldn't even be mad. There. It helps with a handful of different things. First and foremost, this deck has a huge weakness versus getting its normal summon popped before they get to make Magius. That can be a huge, huge problem for the deck. Being able to just extend through that with a card like this would be awesome. So as an extender, it works. It's technically just another starter. Again, this is just a card that would pull whichever of the best Crusadia names straight out of the deck, so you don't even have to worry about Magius resolving, right? So we just pull Draco right out of the deck. Cool. His name's in rotation. He is now live. We pull Arborea out. Cool. We've got a tuner now, as well as the Banelinks to be live to protect us from other things, right? Or Reclusia, right? Whichever one of the better names you want, you didn't open or might not have access to, you get them, which is great. And the last thing would be small synergies. Being able to summon Draco on the opponent's turn. Hold on. I got to double check that. Let's see. If this card is normal summon or special summon. Okay, so yeah, you could just summon Draco on the opponent's turn. Maybe you already interrupted them enough and they're not doing much, and they pass on end phase Draco to a link monster you point to, and then this card would trigger to still get you a Crusadia follow-up. So you'd get the body, then you get another body to be able to play next turn, which would be really cool. So it guarantees you follow-up. It also gives you interruption in the form of Reclusia, and this is one of my favorite things about a card this style added to this deck, because you'd be able to, even if you opened this, use it as a really good extender to help you keep playing, to help you make a stronger board, and you still would be able to search this off of Regulix so that you could set it for your opponent's turn. And what do you do on your opponent's turn? You would fire this to summon Reclusia straight out of the deck, popping a card your opponent controls, and then, assuming you ended on Equimax, this also would have just pulled a Crusadia out of the deck so that Equimax could tribute it for his negate as well. Assuming you went through Arborea, you'd be able to keep the Reclusia on field, and you'd have the negate live for Equimax, which is awesome. So I love that this card would add like layers to the deck in terms of extender, starter, and interruption all at the same time, which is just really, really awesome. So I think this is, if we could get one Crusadia card, I would pick this to be it. Just an E-Tele that summons a Crusadia straight out of the deck. Amazing. I would love that. Now getting to the next card. We've seen at times people have tried to play stuff like Formud Skipper in this deck because it can like copy the name of a Crusadia extract monster and therefore be linked into Magius and technically search you another extender in the form of a level 5 or higher Cybers monster, which is cool. But at the end of the day, This card would lose to stuff like Imperm. It would keep you from getting into Magius. It could get really clunky at times. And so what I think another option I'd like to see for the deck is maybe a good normal summon. The deck doesn't really have a great normal summon. You end up normal summoning a Crusadia a lot of the time just because it works. But like, why do that when you could actually have like an actual good normal summon for the deck? I mean, what if they got a Stratos? I know I mentioned Stratos in a lot of different decks, but what if they got a card that just said, when this card's normal summoned, add one Crusadia monster? If they want to be crazy, make it say Crusadia card, especially if they get an E-Tele, then that's like even more insane. But just add a Crusadia monster at least from deck to hand. It gets you the extender. It is a one card play now because that card would be normal summoned, make it a Magius. You've already searched an extender. Bloop. Drop the extender, get a search off Magius there, make Regulus, and so on and so forth. Just start linking up. Which is really cool. It'd be nice to have a one card play, but it'd also be nice to have a legit good normal summon in the deck that doesn't lose the stuff like Imperm, Veiler, whatever, because it's kind of out of archetype. So that would be really cool. That would just add to the deck's consistency and a little bit of power because you'd have a card that like actually is getting you a +1 instead of being like a 1-for-1 extender like a lot of the Crusadia names end up being. So that would be something really cool to see as well. And I guess from that point, I moved to like the last things I'll mention. This deck could get interruptions in different forms. Like if they didn't want to go through with the E-Tele form of things, they could totally just say, hey, let's actually give this deck like a really strong trap card. Has Crusadia in the name, but it's just like a really good interruption. And it gives Regulex a good turn 1 power interruption to search. And I would take that, regardless, if it was the E-Tele or not. And the other thing would be, maybe give them like a legit good synchro monster. One thing that somebody who loves the lore, my good buddy Charles from Team COG, has mentioned to me, we have an extract monster for, let's see, Reclusia pairs with Magius. Like Magius is the extract form of Reclusia. Equimax, I believe, is Maximus. I gotta think of the rest of these. Arborea pairs with Spatha, and then Leonis pairs with Regulex. So I'm sitting here going like, where's the dragon? What is Draco? Where's Draco's extra deck monster? There. So maybe we could get a synchro. I know like World Legacy or World Chalice, whatever, the Justiciar Ib got banned. It's probably not coming back anytime soon because that card's crazy. If we got a synchro that was like legit good enough and like helped your engine but also was a solid interruption, that would be something really, really interesting. I mean, we have Arborea, but you never really take advantage of it for in-archetype stuff. You're always just making generic boss monsters with it. So it's kind of weird there, but I don't know. I think that could be a route they go, is give them another extra deck monster that kind of helps them add to the interruption. Because as far as extra deck goes, you're usually just making Equimax, and then you have to have like gas to get to other boss monsters. Especially if you're looking at a pure variant. I mean, I know if you're splashing other engines in, it gets, more interesting, and you start like having access to other end boards and stuff, the rocket engine and so on and so forth, but still just worth noting there. But that's where I'm at the end of the day. I like where this deck's at. I still think it's like a solid, when you read the cards, you're like, this deck, if it got the right support and doesn't need much, would be able to compete in this immediate format. We just have to see the right support come out. So those are my thoughts on where I think the deck is and where I think Konami should go with it if they choose to. But, those are just my thoughts. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. So please, please, please let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on Crusadia. What support would you want this deck to get, if any at all? Let's say, for example, if you could only get one card, just like Crawler's got, what one card would you want to try and like fix this archetype? In your opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts there, but also subscribe to the channel if you have not yet and you want to see more stuff from me down the line, and follow me on Twitter. But other than that, I'm out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.